And one of the problem areas and challenge areas for adults with ADHD is actually managing clutter and mess and disorganization. That's physical clutter and physical environment, whether that's a messy desk, messy kitchen cupboards, papers all over your dining room table, ironing mountain on the chair in the lounge or on your bed, and then you move it from the bed to the chair so you can go to sleep. But it's a real source of shame, actually, isn't it, Steph, for many adults with ADHD?
Yeah, definitely a massive source of shame, but also a huge source of overwhelm, because it's like the clutter in your head just seems to be magnified and reflects your environment, because we've already got so much up in our heads that the clutter and the physical, it just kind of tips us over the edge a lot of the time.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it gets to that point when we become so tired and drained by it. It becomes like a vicious circle because we don't have the executive function or the energy to actually make the decisions that it needs to sort, because there's a lot of decision making that neurotypical people take for granted, actually, in cluttering and desorting. They just go, oh, that goes that goes there. Whereas we go, well, that could go there, but maybe it should go there. What if I buy a shelf for here? And maybe I should, and maybe I should paint that wall. And maybe I shouldn't put that shelf up until I've painted that wall. And, and then before you know it, you're off on researching paint colors.
So true.
When you should have just been putting one thing away.
It's never simple.
So it's just
not.
No, absolutely never simple. So our executive dysfunction plays horrendously into this. And then shame about it and overwhelm, because society expects people to be tidy, particularly women. Societal expectations to keep a good home. That tradition has not gone away. And that shape, that thought of somebody just dropping in when your house is a bit of a mess.
Have lots of conversations at the door.
Yes. Like, oh yes, I would invite you in, but but actually inviting somebody around is quite a good strategy for getting tidy, because the hour before somebody comes around, I can do more because that's the urgency. But we need that urgency or some interest level to get the dopamine hit in order for us to do it, because decluttering is boring and it's emotionally draining as well. Because we've talked about this with our members a lot this week, haven't we, Steph, about how there's a lot of years of failure that we perceive in our old clutter, isn't there, in our old bits of paper.
Yeah, like I remember, I think I was talking about like when people were sorting out mail, and just each letter or a bill, an unpaid bill or a penalty that just would stop the person in their tracks from actually doing something about the paper, like filing the mail and things like that. So we're talking a lot more papers, a lot more things. And a lot of ADHDs leave their things out as visual prompts because of the whole out of sight, out of mind. So, it could be a tax return, it could be all eBay items you want to put on eBay, or it could be all those returns from the impulsive spending. And so just on the floor but we have trouble just getting back, regardless if it's in sight or out of sight. So that's a problem. It stays around.
Yeah. And then there's actually a really interesting scientific study that's been done, which suggests about the impact that it does actually have on our executive function. It does actually make it worse. It makes our attention problems worse, having clutter hanging around. And actually, we're more likely to eat unhealthy foods if we have clutter around. And the best bit of scientific research to do with clutter is that we are less likely to be able to recognize the emotions of others if we are in a cluttered environment. They did a test with people about asking people about the emotions of characters in films when there was clutter, without clutter. And without the clutter, we were more able to recognize the emotions of others. So this is actually impacting our relationships
massively.
Really interesting level, as well as maybe if you have a neurotypical partner or you live with other neurotypical people and they're starting to find it a challenge. It is really, really hard, but as long as you've got somebody understanding, and I think talking to them about how clutter makes you feel and how you've got all these years of, well, I bought that for that hobby that I did for a few weeks and now I'm ashamed because I let that go, or I never got around to making those cosmetics or those candles and all those jam jars. I have got rid of the jam jars now, as you know, Steph. Yeah. But there's all the failure and the business ideas and going through the notebooks and that, well, there's a traffic fine. And then it's almost like it's a visual reminder of the things you haven't got round to, or those expectations of yourself that you need to let go of. But as soon as we do, we'll start to feel so much better, won't we?
Yeah, I mean, we all feel that, don't we? Once our environment is clean, or if that's us doing it ourselves or someone doing it for us, it just, you just feel so much lighter and clearer. And I guess that's that study that talks about how it's difficult to pick up other people's emotions, is because I think when there's so much around, us ADHDers, right, no filters, and it's all coming at us. And I think it's really hard. There's no capacity to actually observe, pick up on other people's emotions, because you're probably drowning in your own overwhelm.
Yeah, exactly. And that is what it's all about. So where do we start? So there's two challenge areas. There's number one is like an infrastructure problem. Maybe you've got too much stuff and there's nowhere to put it, or you haven't got a place for the thing. So you literally can't put it away because there is nowhere for it to go. It might be in a box, it might be in a bag. So then you need to address that infrastructure and do kind of quite a bit of the hard work, like excavating in order to make it all work properly. So I pulled everything out of my understairs cupboard a couple of weeks ago and started again, but I wouldn't have been able to do little bits of it. Would have been impossible. So you can do little bits once you've got the big infrastructure bit sorted with your clutter. Now, I suggest you get help with this, and you either use one of our Smash It sessions, which we run regularly, at least once a week, to do this. So we do it on Zoom, and that really, really helps. Or you get a buddy, so you get somebody to help you. So somebody's physically with you. So you're doing it, you put some music on, you set aside time. So there's that aspect. And then you can kind of get into the habit of kind of just clearing areas, but you can't do that unless you've got a home for everything. And more often than not, we've got like piles of magazines or paper. So we really need to get rid and learn to kind of let go of that stuff. But prioritize, because Rome wasn't built in a day. What's bugging you the most? What is getting in the way the most? Is it your desk? Is it the kitchen worktop? Is it the fact that the dining table is covered so you can't even eat as a family at the dining room table, which I know has been a problem for a lot of our members? Visualize how you're going to feel when it's sorted, and then maybe use some techniques to get the dopamine flowing. I've produced 2 videos this week for our members. So put Mission Impossible music on, set a timer, and see if you can beat the clock. Can I do this in 5 minutes or less? Or you maybe pick 10 items. You go, right, I'm just going to do 10 items. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then you might be motivated to do some more. So methods to do it. So there's some other little ways to get dopamine hits, aren't there? In sort of all sorts of things. Put on your favorite song. Maybe listen to a podcast if you don't have to make decisions, if it's some kind of mindless sorting.
I find as well, sometimes our kids with ADHD, they like to talk and they like to explain things and tell you things for I don't know how many times. And I find that it's quite, I find I tend to start kind of cleaning and listening to them at the same time, because I actually will engage more in the conversation if I'm moving and I don't feel anxious about all the stuff that needs to be done. So I can kind of listen, and because there's less anxiety, I'm getting the stuff done and I'm moving, so more multisensory, and I'm able to talk to my child and maybe even enlist their help at the same time, and they're more motivated to help too, because they can talk to you. I
love that, because I like to when I'm on the phone move around, because I think better. Actually, it takes a bit of the kind of emotional heat off what you're doing and the decluttering. I really love that. That is a great technique. So, I mean, you could take pictures. We've had people literally put a sheet over part of the room and only tidy the bit that's visible. Less overwhelming. There's all sorts of things you can do, but the biggest thing to remember is let go of the shame, and remember that this will drain your fuel tank. You need to do lots of self-care before and afterwards, because it will make you tired. There's a lot of executive function involved in decluttering and tidying, so don't underestimate. And it might mean that you're emotionally less able to regulate afterwards. So, don't be having those difficult conversations after you've decluttered a cupboard, for goodness sake.
Well, one thing we've done as well in Unlocked, which our members are finding really helpful on the decision-making aspect, we've also created a WhatsApp group for decisions. So for instance, if you're not sure whether to put, keep a certain thing, members go into the WhatsApp group and they can ask, do I keep it? It's kind of giving them permission, right, to kind of get rid of something or to put something somewhere, just, to kind of overcome those hurdles. So it's fantastic.